We're doing Yennefer today.
I thought you'd have fangs or horns or something.
Stop it, girl! We can teach you!
She's no daughter of mine.
Just because you fucked it up doesn't mean we will.
Yennefer of Vengerberg.
My apologies.
Yennefer's full name is Yennefer of Vangerberg. That took me like 4 tries. I'm not even kidding. She was born in 1173, and she was hold on, I can't speak words. She was Adrian. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. I'll probably put it up here somewhere. I don't know where I'll put it, but I'll try to spell it or pronounce it correctly. Words are hard, okay, guys? So going a little bit into her race and lineage, we know that she's from Adrian. We know that she is from Vengerberg, and then she is also a quarter elf, which means her mother was in fact half elf. Her story from the books to the Netflix TV show is a little bit different here. So in the books and in the TV show, Yennefer was a hunchback in both of them. The difference is in the Netflix TV show is she isn't necessarily related to her father. It's speculated that he's actually her stepfather because her mother ends up saying, resent her as your own.
She's our daughter.
She's no daughter of mine.
I don't know if she was trying to protect her or if that's actually her stepfather. Now, her father ends up beating her because she's a hunchback, and she does actually end up blaming Yennefer's mother for this. We don't know the parents' names from what I could find so far. We may get them revealed in the future. Who knows, but the book series is over and I couldn't find anything on the internet. So they just might be unnamed characters. They're not really important. All that's important is they're pieces of crap. So Yennefer's father actually ended up blaming Yennefer's mother that she was a hunchback. Yennefer's mother beforehand ended up having an abortion. He ended up believing that that was the reason why she was born hunchback. He also ended up blaming her elven blood within her that made her hunchback. Because from what I understand in the universe, if you start intermingling with humans and elves and everything, even if it's not your fault, this can end up leading to deformities in your bloodline. Oh my god, I sneezed. Her father did actually end up leaving opposed to the Netflix show. He ended up beating Yennefer, and then he ended up leaving her for another person, and then her mother followed the characteristics soon after. So this may end up kind of describing why Yennefer is the way she is, and why she wants power, and why she eventually wants a family, because she never had these things growing up. Yennefer had a very tragic beginning. In the show, Yennefer ends up collecting flowers off the ground whenever she ends up spying on those two couples at the beginning of the Netflix show. Now, whenever they end up getting mad and pushing her to the ground, what she ends up doing is, out of reflex, she ends up throwing a portal, which ends up putting her on the map for the Brotherhood of Sorcerers, or Sorceresses, whichever one is.
Well, it looks to me like you portaled in.
She ends up getting tracked down by Tissaia. Even though Isred did, in fact, try to hide her, Tissaia did end up eventually finding her, and she ended up offering her father 4 marks for her.
6.
4.
So,
Now, at one point, he ended up going down. I believe it was 6 marks or something like that, but he ended up going down because he didn't really see the value in Yennefer. So he ended up giving her up to the Brotherhood, and she ended up going off and training and everything. This is a little bit different than in the books because it doesn't really get into the origins and the nitty-gritty. The first glimpse we get of Yennefer, she ends up traveling to the temple in, let me try to pronounce this real quick. It's Militile, or something like that. Mitile. Something along those lines in Elendor. Now, she ends up going here originally because she goes to Nanek, and she tries to find a cure for her infertility. So, this is also where it's a large departure from the books to in the Netflix TV show, but the books and the video games kind of follow along the same line. In the TV show, how they explain it is the ritual Yennefer ends up going, it ends up basically taking out her uterus and giving her physical beauty. In the books, how it ends up working, infertility is just a normal thing within the Witcher and the sorcerer or sorceress community. They end up doing this so they're immune to STIs and STDs, and then also so they don't have any other allegiances to anywhere else. Now, there's a really cool moment in the Netflix TV show that I really appreciated. Whenever Yennefer is brought to the pond and she's curious of what's going on, she kind of is gazing through the window and she tries to look through and see what's going on with their sisters and why she wasn't included. Tissaia ends up explaining some people of magic are conduits and some people become batteries, basically.
She's a conduit.
It's also fair to note that Yennefer was seen as a beautiful woman, which is why I believe Geralt ended up eventually tying himself to her through destiny. She's a beautiful woman. She has long curly locks. She ends up representing everything I believe in the Witcher universe that really gives to feminine power, feminine energy, and she is really her own thing. She isn't a part of Geralt. She is Yennefer, and Geralt is his own being. And I really appreciate that in this story. She's not just some trope that the author Andrew Sapkowski ends up following through. He really makes her into her own independent being. Now, Yen does end up betraying the Brotherhood of Sorceresses whenever we can see she's kind of doing parlor tricks and everything, and she ends up betraying Tissaia in the Netflix show. This doesn't happen in the books. So whenever this is going on, the sorceresses are supposed to be trained, or sorcerers are supposed to be trained, and then they're supposed to be sent off to kingdoms to basically advise the kings. Remember how this ties back to destiny. It's a thing I will continually say throughout the videos because the show is very heavy on destiny. The destiny here shows that Yen doesn't end up going to Nilfgaard. I believe if she wouldn't have went to Nilfgaard, she could have evaded the entire war that ended up happening whenever the Imperials ended up taking over. And again, this whole triangle we're going over between Ciri and Yennefer and Geralt, that wouldn't end up happening. Everything wouldn't end up connecting like that. Now, modern day, we have what's called the Lodge of Sorceresses. From the ruins of the Brotherhood of Sorceresses, we end up having the Lodge of Sorceresses. I believe at the Battle of Silent Hill, if I'm remembering correctly, there were 13 sorceresses lost. Now, Geralt does end up getting worried because whenever he ends up going there, on the obelisk it has Yennefer's name, but it was actually mistaken for another person's name, and Geralt's relieved to know this. Now, this is also very important to me from whenever I read this, because that shows Geralt's caring side, and as we can tell from the show and from the books and from the games, Geralt is not like that. He's very uncaring about everything except for Yennefer, which really gives him a great dynamic. I'm just going to read this off to you guys because I want you to hear this direct quote from Andrew Sapkowski, but he ended up saying in an interview, "When I created Yennefer's character, I wanted Geralt to fully grow. And then I decided to make things complicated. I created a female character who refuses to be a fantasy stereotype to please the reader." So basically, in the books, he refused to do that trope. Remember how I said I ended up appreciating how he didn't end up going through the trope? Now, Yennefer also had 2 other lovers, supposedly. She ended up having Isred, which we saw in the show. And the other one kind of made me turn my head a little bit, and I couldn't find any solid evidence. It was just kind of speculation. I referred to forums, which I'll probably throw down to below on it. Maybe if you guys can find something, let me know. I'd be interested in investigating more, maybe a whole nother video on it. She had a fling with Crate from the court of Sintra, supposedly before those events ended up happening. But supposedly Geralt wasn't really angry about it because he wasn't really in a relationship with Yennefer at that point, so... But Yennefer had flings. She got a lot of flings because she basically used it as power grab. So Yennefer and Triss and all the Brotherhood was at the Battle of Sodden Hill. While we're moving forward with Yennefer, keep in mind on how the destinies work, how she's infertile. Her entire thing is she wants to have a child. That's the really major driving force for her in the Witcher universe. Geralt ends up explaining the one episode where they go and hunt down the dragon that he has a child of surprise on the way and how he would like them both to raise it.
You have a child surprise.
Also remember the motive that Yennefer wanted to use the Jinn's powers to restore her fertility. Now again, this differs from the show to in the books and games. In the show, she is one of the only sorceresses, from what we know, that went through this transformation. Where in the games and in the books, they are put through infertility, so there's no conflicting issues that end up occurring.
The people who made us, they made us sterile for a lot of reasons.
Over time, if they end up following the sequences of the games and the stories, we should end up seeing that Yennefer really does end up adopting Ciri as her own. And I really love that ending scene whenever Ciri ends up quoting,
Who is Yennefer?
That is just awesome to me. That really ends up giving you kind of that little bite size that they're going to stay true to the story. Lauren Schmidt also ended up releasing an announcement saying that the storyline will be more linear going forward. So it's not going to be these massive time jumps because Yennefer was the one that was in the past the most between Geralt and Yennefer. Geralt was like 30 years or so, maybe. You have to keep in reference that Pavetta was pregnant with Ciri, and then Ciri had to be born, and then Sintra had to fall. There were a lot of events that Geralt had to go through, but I think it was about 30, 20 years. That might be a bit of a stretch. It might have been a decade or so. And Yennefer's story was whenever she was a younger girl, which I think in the show she's around a century old with Geralt. They both have extended lifetimes from their craft that they end up doing and their profession. Anyways, guys, this will end up finishing up the deep dive for this episode of The Witcher. So go ahead and make sure to leave any comments or anything I maybe ended up missing or could add to future episodes. Any ideas you guys want me to cover, specific topics, just put it down below. Make sure to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe. It will really, really help the channel. And then also share it if you have people that are interested in The Witcher. Again, I'm a small content creator. I'm making these so people kind of get more of a story behind the universe. I'm really excited about this series. This is a passion project I'm really doing. But yeah, until next time, guys, see ya.